5:30 when you're on.
Good evening, it's 5:30, Tuesday, July 26th. Call to order of the Economic Development Committee. Fellow Council Member Emily Falconer.
Present.
And just noting that Council Member Katie Parashu is excused. Did you see any corrections, additions, or subtractions to the minutes as provided?
No.
Okay, we'll accept the minutes. Topic A. Mayor, it's all yours.
Great. So we met with Rick Abbott over at the Cooperstown All-Star Village a couple of mornings ago. And we were talking about a couple of things. Mostly it was about the Oneonta Public Transit and whether or not that was going to be something that made sense as a long-term for the Cooperstown All-Star Village. The jury's still out on that, but I would say the likelihood of that is not great. They don't really need us to do that. It'd be more us doing that. And their issue is that now they are on a 6-day-a-week, which is what they were, but they were always taking a day off. Mm-hmm. So they're on a 6-day-a-week, but they start up the next week that next day. So if it's a week that starts on a Sunday, for the sake of argument, the next one would start up on Saturday, and so forth. So the opening day is changing consistently. What they are doing is they kind of slot the second afternoon where you were there. So if I don't remember reading this correctly, let me know. But they slot the second afternoon essentially as their Cooperstown Hall of Fame day. It's one of the reasons that the kids come to a Cooperstown All-Star Village. They don't see a whole lot of connection to the city of Oneonta, but they're kind of inclined, as you know, Len, from having the conversation with them, they're inclined to be supportive of it and to develop a relationship with us. So, so to start with, although the bus and the trolley-esque, use of a bus may or may not happen, they are going to provide us with the option of being able to put a 10-by-10 tent up there for their opening day. I'm not sure if it's the entire day. I think it was more morning-centric. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, I think it was. The teams are generally arriving around a couple hours time frame, probably the morning.
Right.
So it would be the time to.
Right.
Makes sense.
Exactly. So they're looking at our allowing us to put a 10-by-10 tent up there and have it essentially concierged. If that's a word. So staffed by somebody who could be, hawking the notion of a downtown visit, which is kind of great. On top of that, would be an opportunity for us to put, materials in their hands. They would also, in fact, put materials into their own publications, but not a whole bunch of individual menus, but maybe something a little bit more cohesive as a single document. So that's nice, right? Obviously, that would be for next year. We'd be looking at trying to determine what kind of materials might be something that we could provide, and maybe most importantly, what some personnel, who they would be, where they would come from, how they would be trained to be representative of the city would be, something that we wouldn't want to leave to chance. So that said, I'll roll through this.
Can we just take a pause?
Yeah, okay.
So the 10-by-10 Canopy 10 would be not to help foster the interest of getting on a trolley to go downtown, but just the things of interest marketing.
Yes, basically, of downtown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and there may or may not be a trolley, but I don't think that would be something we should be presuming will happen. What their sense of it was, what Rick's sense of it was, is that what Oneonta has to offer is probably more likely an early evening visit for their folks rather than a lunchtime visit. They're okay, or at least Rick's okay. The jury would be out on Marty's take on that, but of not controlling every hot dog and every slice of pizza that goes into the kids' mouths or the parents' mouths, but rather to say, hey, we have a number of opportunities in downtown Oneonta. So the frustration that he expressed off of that idea was that, the restaurants aren't particularly well promoted, and, that, knowing something about those restaurants and maybe even specials would be a help. But the bigger issue is if you were to move people to downtown in the early evening, maybe a couple of times a week, if they take one day and that's their Cooperstown Hall of Fame day, that leaves us a few other days. If you were to do that and all of the stores would be closed because we typically don't stay open, that would be not great. So we have an opportunity, an educational opportunity and more, to maybe convince a couple of days a week the retailers to consider being open for the Cooperstown All-Star Village. They looked at the shopping and the dining and the entertainment value in Oneonta in the evening, and that might be they thought that they weren't doing maybe as good a job as they could be doing with the Oneonta Outlaws connection, and other things that we may be able to send them into our downtown in the early evening for that's family-oriented entertainment. So what they'd like to see is, and I think we all agree with it, promotion of specials from restaurants, retailers that are Cooperstown All-Star Village centric, convincing retailers to stay open later on a couple of designated days, coordinating and promoting entertainment options for them as well. So what I'd like to ask this committee to consider, as we have now, 8 months or so before we have to put anything into action, would be over the course of that time, maybe this committee might take on the charge of developing a strategy for that concierge presence, the identifying the personnel, where that would come from, what agency or what partner that might come from, creating some sort of expectation around training would be, I think, a good charge for this committee as well. And then maybe determining 1 or 2 evenings per week that would be, for the Cooperstown All-Star Village's engagement, obviously for the rest of the communities as well, but that we might convince retail and restaurants and entertainment to kind of buy into. And then, of course, identifying any other promotional opportunities that you guys may determine that would wind up putting feet on the street. Because that's, economic development, in its basic form, looks like foot traffic. So it would be a help to our downtown, and honestly, we could send them in other directions too. We could send them down to the Bella Michaels and the Social Eats and the wherevers, that we have popping up here and there around the city. So it doesn't have to be just specifically downtown. So that's so I'd like to entertain that as a charge potentially for this committee around economic development. That between now and 8-9 months from now, that we've developed something that has a workflow, and we know who the partners are, and the logistics and materials. So that's me. That's I'll give you these are my notes from that meeting, so you can have that. Greg, did I miss anything from that conversation? No. So any questions that you have around that, or any thoughts?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. I think that's really great. I actually spoke with a friend of mine kind of talking about this and how we can connect the All-Star Village to Oneonta a little bit more. And he mentioned maybe as a possible way to staff a booth like that. He had actually brought something like that up. There used to be a youth employment program through the county with like city ambassadors, so that might be like kind of a cool thing, like maybe get some of our high school kids involved, obviously chaperoned, but and then another thought that kind of quickly came to mind, as I'm just thinking marketing materials, is maybe getting some kind of voucher booklet or something like that people can take with promotions that has hours of the business, where it is, and all that kind of stuff right there. Because I know one one thing I find as a business owner, you know, or wife of a business owner, and we're only open 3 days a week, people are always like, why aren't you open more? When, you know, when are you open? And then, you know, I know a lot of businesses kind of have that right now. It's tough with staffing.
That's one of the things Lynn and I have talked about too, I think, is in some fashion, if we could wave a magic wand, you know, if this committee could wave a magic wand, one of the first things I expect that we'd see would be, you know, more resources around staffing for restaurants and businesses that just cannot stay open because they, or even open at all. Look at Hill City Grill, hasn't opened at all for lack of staffing. I don't know what the answer is to that, obviously, but it would certainly be a game changer if we were able to identify some avenue through which we might be able to more appropriately staff up our businesses.
Yeah, like it would almost be kind of cool if businesses could come together and hire one staff that like works, you know what I mean? So it like, I don't know how that would be possible business-wise, you know, but like one floating staff that like works at 3 different stores. You know, so now you don't have to take someone on for like a full, because people want hours, you know, like, but it's just, I work here and here and here, and kind of float around. That'd be kind of cool, but I don't know, it would require a lot. A lot, yeah, it would require a lot of coordination.
So are you comfortable, then as chair, are you comfortable with kind of taking this on as a charge?
Well, I kind of want to back up and just talk about this. So I was originally thinking when you mentioned that we would be trying to get our downtown businesses and organizations to stay open later on a particular night. And I was trying to think that floating schedule that they're on now. They're on a floating schedule.
You could probably still sit at a, you know, Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday, and, you know, in some fashion, you can connect it to their schedule.
So are you kind of interfacing with the downtown businesses now, that one group that you were?
Mm-hmm.
So then that would be a conversation we should have with them now, saying, okay, in 23, would a Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday night consistently during this period that this very large tourist attraction is open, would you be willing to stay open until, did you guys start times, 8:30, 9 o'clock? We did. I'm assuming the restaurants would stay open a little bit later.
Yeah. We did. So I think that's, you know, honestly, this is yours to kind of determine through conversations with merchants. And I know that Katie has expressed an interest several times in the notion of, you know, connecting with the merchants as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would just kind of be a matter of looking at what the baseball schedule is, and then kind of, I mean, most businesses are open on the weekends. You know, finding days that most businesses are open, and then maybe trying to coordinate different specials that go with that day, you know, or what day do you want to generate more business? Maybe it's Saturday.
Well, I think it is kind of a requirement that for a couple of days, at least one day out of the week, that businesses might look at, just to pick a time, that 8 o'clock might be a time that they kind of more institutionally are open, let's say Thursday, just for the sake of argument, so that there's a destination for people to do something other than dine or, you know, go to an Outlaws game or something.
I see. So basically focusing on like perhaps one weekday, we'll just say, and they would stay open later.
Yes.
And, okay, all right, I see what you're saying. Okay, sure.
And so then Cooperstown All-Star Village, they would promote to their teams internally to kind of funnel that information besides this canopy tent, to get that information to the teams that, hey, Thursdays and Fridays, these businesses in downtown Oneonta, these are the ones that we're trying to get you to go to.
And kind of the cherry on the top of that is around the marketing committee, which is a subcommittee of this group. I've been soliciting, as I told you, I think it's inappropriate to bring anybody into a marketing committee that might be looking to make a dime off of it, because there are a lot of marketing people out there. We don't want to lose their expertise, but we don't necessarily want to have them being the the decision makers. So I've reached out to Bassett Hospital, and they're sending over their head of marketing. I reached out to Harwick and Sudi, same deal. And I reached out to the Cooperstown All-Star Village, and they're sending over their director of business operations.
Great.
So they'll be an invested partner in our marketing.
Good. So then you're going to put the subcommittee group of marketing, which has...
And that's Emily, and that's Katie, and that's Judy.
And then the other three organizations are sending their
Yes.
marketing folks.
And both colleges, the hospital, and the Cooperstown All-Star.
Probably something in the next 4 months or so they'll meet.
Oh, within the next few weeks, for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Just,
So that's all I've got.
if it's okay, I just wanted to mention, we have the canopy and everything all set up. I believe most of it is most or all of the stuff with the canopy is at Damaski, because I think Gary Lane uses it. And speaking of Gary, he is unbelievable ambassador for the city. A couple years ago, we set the whole canopy up at the Sharon Springs Beekman Boys ball event that they have, and they hit thousands and thousands of people. And Gary was there for a while, and it was pretty amazing to watch him promoting the city and promoting Damaski. So he might be a good person to stick in that booth. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The value of the team, I love that.
Yeah, he's really
Great.
good.
So anyways, this will keep you busy for a while.
Oh, yeah, this is great. This is great.
Okay, the Main Street alleyways. What is the proper terminology? Alleys or alleyways?
However you're feeling.
Well, we have 2 of them that we'd like to talk about. Off of Deet Street, we have 2 of them. And technically, we have one off of Main Street between Community Bank and Sean Mage, and that Harold's Army Navy store.
And then there's one that kind of goes to Chestnut
That's right.
through the parking lot.
Yeah, correct.
Right, so I really would love to see something happen with our alleyways so much, right? So I've kind of been like working with this in a small scale, maybe to start, and just kind of seeing what can be done. And so I'm actually meeting with Dave Mertzig this Thursday, to kind of talk about what needs to happen in order for us, like maybe if we wanted to apply for, or I'm saying we as like, if people that own the property around the small alleyway between the Brizzy's parking lot and D Street, right? If they wanted to hang some lights or get some art in there and clean it up a little bit and make it more inviting and safer for people, what needs to happen as far as easements, if the city could pay for the electricity for the lighting, it's like a really nominal amount if they're LED lights, but it just then takes the responsibility away from any one business owner to have to maintain it, especially as like buildings change hands, this and that, kind of been talking to, some of the people that own the buildings to see if they're kind of on board, and most of them are. So that's kind of like where I am next step, and my thought is, I've been kind of working with the manager at Roots, because we kind of just want to see it get cleaned up. My husband owns the building, so. I hope it's not a conflict of interest to want to do this, okay? I feel like a little nervous about it, but, it would just, even if we could just get this small little piece kind of looking a little brighter and cleaner, it might serve as a catalyst then for other business owners to follow this example and do the same thing, or building owners rather. So I'll give you a report as to what I find out. And
And so we're thinking first step is to find out the legalities.
Mm-hmm.
Who owns what can or cannot the city do to participate in this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so you're just seeking legal advice from our city attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, what do you think, if he said yes to what you're suggesting, what do you think would be the first step in moving forward on this? Clean up?
Yeah, clean up and then kind of getting someone to install the lights, you know, and then it comes down to like who's gonna pay for the lights, who's gonna pay to install the lights, you know, there's just like a lot of little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's gonna be too much of a problem. And then maybe eventually, like, if we could get some artwork, you know, some mural, like a mural on like that side of the building. Maybe the Public Arts Fund could, you know, pay for paint for it, or pay an artist to do it, or have a call for submissions or whatever. When I talked with Mr. Klugo about that, he was a little unsure if we could even paint a mural there or not. He wasn't opposed to it, but I guess the way he got that funding was through an historical grant, and there might be limitations on what you can and cannot put on the building.
I'll share this information with you. I've shared it with the two gentlemen to my left, but a company that I use is called Lynn Spring Sign System.
Okay.
And think of trampoline springs. They have a framework now. And what I think is kind of cool about it is that we could actually have a rotating art display. So local artists, you could have their display for the month or for the quarter. Depends on how big we do it. But think of on the wallscape, you could have an 8-foot by 16-foot vinyl artist work. And then it's very simple to install, meaning the spring system, the frame system stays there, but then you just literally unhinge it, take it off the springs. It usually takes me, an 8/16 would take me maybe a half an hour or less to hang it myself. I attribute it to like hanging curtains.
It's almost like like panels, then like printed.
It's all vinyl, and
Mhm.
it's very affordable. I was suggesting it for our parking garage, because maybe changing the landscape of that, would make it look a little better.
Yeah, I'd love to see what they look like, you know, that might be a way, even if just temporarily, to kind of get something up there that is a temporary solution.
What's kind of cool about it is that the artist can actually submit their work, and then it'll look exactly like that, and you just hang it, like a picture. And literally, that's what it looks like, is a picture, so.
Okay.
Whereas if the artist actually has to go out there, as you're an artist, it's a little bit different to go from here to, you know, a brick building, right? So completely different, but you could take your work and then just put it up on a wall, and 8-foot or 16-foot, whatever size the group decides to do. I think it would just be interesting, and then you could just have different locations located throughout the city, and you could just start rotating artwork.
Cool, yeah. Lynn, Lynn.
LIND.
Oh, that was way off. Lind Spring.
Sign system.
Okay. I'll put it in here. Okay, cool, yeah, I'll check that.
That way we could actually go in and say paint up to 10 foot high.
I guess it's just a matter of pricing and then who pays for it and how do you get it paid, you know, if it's thousands of dollars,
Start with options.
you know, yeah, so, but definitely, I mean, I'm open to anything.
Very affordable.
Cool.
Yeah, it's very
If I can jump in just for a quick sec, I've been wandering around city to city lately, just stealing ideas from places. And almost every city that I've seen that's had kind of an issue area, they have, if they've addressed it, they've done it on the cheap with hanging lights and some funky benches and, you know, just a couple of sculptures and some, you know, seating that's also funky, but, you know, clustered, and it's transformative. It's done on the cheap. I mean, again, a lot of the places that I've been visiting have, I look for their struggling areas, and typically they're in their downtowns,
Right.
and that's how they're doing it.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing just what putting like
Just
a
the
couple
ambiance.
strands of lights like that, like just makes you feel like, ah.
And then, of course, then get into pavement, but before pavement would probably be drainage, right, stormwater. Right. Yeah, paver,
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly behind, between Dietz and the Community Bank parking lot area, that has some
storm issues, stormwater issues, yeah. What other concerns would we have?
No, go ahead, I have something after that, concerns. If you want to talk about concerns first, then, okay. So, a longer-term plan that we have that we're going to be working on is, once the downtown improvement fund with the DRI is wrapped up enough where I know the final numbers, we already have approval from HCR to use money, if we have enough money left, to use it to hire a consultant who could do renderings of the rear facades in those alleyways from Community Bank all the way over to Chestnut. We've already talked to them about it, so that would be us doing renderings for the building owners who are interested in updating their rear facades. And then once we had that, that would be folded into a funding application if we want to do it for a New York Main Street program. And the New York Main Street program funds, it's very similar to what our DRI, Downtown Improvement Fund, just did. They'll do facades. They will do, I think it's like $15,000 out of the grant could go for alleyway improvements themselves, which could be landscaping. I mean, that's not enough for paving, but that could help with landscaping and things like that. The purpose of New York Main Street is to provide assistance and support for housing. So the rear facade, the end wall behind the rear facade would be to improve the access from parking areas into the residential units from the back. But the benefit to us is some of those stores, if they have access in the back, they could be split. They could be a store in the front, a store in the back. You can have outdoor seating for cafes and, you know, whatever else. We'd like to tie that into if the Oneonta Hotel becomes a project and something happens there, because that's such a chunk of that part of the alley. But that's our long-term plan. And that could, I think we could get up to about $50,000 per building for rear facades, but I would want to keep them smaller than that so we can do more.
Okay.
And you apply for about $350 total.
What kind of timeline are we looking at?
Well, I won't know until sometime in 2023 what our final numbers are on the DRI. And so that at that point, we could take whatever's left. If there's enough to hire a consultant, then we could do that. And that would be like an architect. That would be, you know, just doing some renderings and working with the building owners to put on paper what their thoughts are for what their buildings look like. Part of that money too could be spent on fixing some of the wiring back there, you know, that run between the buildings, and at least if we can't go underground, at least putting casings around it and cleaning that up. So anyway, 2023, I would know the amount of money, and then the CFAs come out in July of each year, so maybe 2024. But the other thing is, the New York Main Street program is part of, New York Main Street offers 4 funding programs, and you can only apply for 1 each year. So like if there's a stabilization grant for a building or a downtown anchor grant that we want to go for, we'll have to prioritize in any given year. So I'm thinking 2024, but that's qualified with if there's something else we want to do that year. And there's a lot of work, because we would have to work with the building owners, but if we want to spend money on the alleyways, we'd have to get that figured out, where we can apply, get the ownership or or access
Yeah,
to
some kind of
the right of way or whatever,
Yeah, that's what I kind of want to talk with David about a little bit.
right?
And I wonder if that DRI money could go towards any kind of like trash system, because like one thing in those alleys is like, well, the businesses, restaurants bring the trash out there and, you know,
The
people
DRI,
sitting in it, like, there's just sometimes in our other ways that it's like overflowing. It's terrible.
DRI cannot, but it's possible the New York Main Street, the alley portion, maybe, maybe. And, but it's only 15,000, so it's not gonna sound.
It's not a lot, I know, we're like, oh, if we could like, maybe we put it towards that and then encourage people to put a little of their own money and time into kind of like cleaning it up and, yeah.
It couldn't.
But, okay, cool, that's exciting.
Yep.
I was just thinking of the timeline, so is there any way of kind of preempting the 2023 DRI money knowledge on finding going out to bid for an architect to give us a quote?
I suppose you could do that, but you'd be asking them to hold their price, you know, for a little while, and then, yeah. I may know the number sooner. There's a couple of projects that are still trying to get their contractors in place, or one is close, we think, to adding the contractor in place. That's been just a real struggle. And the other one has some issues, environmental issues with the building and the budget. So once we have those two sorted out, which may be soon, then I might be able to have a better handle on the funding that might be available.
This is just a thought. I wonder, like, I don't know, I used to work at Cornell in the architecture department, right? And there's like all these talented kids learning architecture, or like, you know, and then they go on to get like internships or things like that. I wonder if you could get like a junior architect or, you know, someone to even like volunteer just to do renderings of it, or do it for like a lesser fee and have like a master architect kind of just sign off on it, since it's not like any kind of insane renovation, or maybe it is, you know, but, or, you know, I mean, I can do like a mock-up, you know, for you.
These are all historic buildings, and the backs don't have storefronts, they don't have, so I'd rather have a preservation architect.
Oh, because there would be storefronts put on the back.
Yeah,
I see.
or
Okay.
possibly, or not. And a preservation architect would be able to tell us what can and can't be done, so we don't run into problems with SHPO. Because every single building will have to go through SHPO approval later if we get the grant. So we're better off getting it, spending a little more in the front to alleviate a lot of the issues that might come up later. Yeah, if they weren't historic buildings and we weren't in a historic district, then that's a great idea. But yeah, with what we just went through, the DRI, getting all of them approved, I mean, even on roofs, the metal, they were questioning the metal awning, whether it was historic. If it was over 50 years old, we may have had to keep it. So, yeah, there's a lot.
Anyway, yeah, okay, just an idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So our next topic is the promotion of commercial and industrial property. And what made me kind of think of this is twofold. One, I actually had a real estate agent call me up promoting commercial property located in the 6th Ward. But then I also remember, Judy, you were kind of talking about that maybe on our website. And so are we to a point where we could start promoting commercial property on our website, or?
Like private,
Yeah.
privately owned?
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know if we can do that, that's a question for David.
Yeah, that's the same issue that we have with identifying
The private.
properties.
Thank you.
Remember that conversation where 90-plus properties were
Well,
identified?
that, yeah, city-owned stuff.
Right, but there was a larger larger scale map that Joan Fox was actually involved in for the Housing Commission, where there were a number of developable properties, as best as she was able to tell, that were identified, and it came down to, and that's going to be one of the charges of one of the work groups, not only determining among those properties what are in fact developable, but also the mechanism, because Judy's right, the city, we can't be a broker for, private industry, but someone else can. And so determining, what that conduit would be for that promotion is going to be one of the charges of that work group. Although, honestly, if somebody comes up with the solution before they do, that's not a bad thing.
So, just to clarify, so you've never had a conversation with David before of whether we could promote?
No, I have not. Not promoting private properties, no. I know that there's been discussions relative to that vacant properties map, and Maureen Seymour, our GIS person, created, I think you guys have the link, if not, we can get it to you. She's got this awesome map that shows our city-owned vacant properties, but also the privately owned vacant properties, and then she's got every overlay you can think of, from water, sewer, steep slopes, things that could prevent, things that could help developing lots, things that can prevent development on those lots, and it's all interactive. You can click those layers on and off and look at every property. So we have that. But whether or not we can actively be promoting or marketing.
But that link that you're talking about, if it's eligible for public use, wouldn't that be something better than promoting individual property? Is that, well, take a look at the entire landscape of the city going on?
I think that if we're posting that publicly, I think we need another layer on it for willing seller and unwilling seller. And if it's an unwilling seller, it should be pulled off the map, pulled off the code. I mean, they're color coded.
Okay.
So if it's a vacant private lot that somebody doesn't want to sell, then that shouldn't be color coded on the map and highlighted. But I think it's a question for David Merzig. I believe, how far can we go as a city? Because, we're supposed to be fair for everyone. And if we're not marketing Joe Schmo's lot and we're marketing, his sister's lot, I don't think that's our goal.
And as I said, we've identified that as a charge from early on for those work groups.
And then we'll see how that plays out.
And those are vacant, they're lots with no buildings, right? Are they vacant buildings as well? I can't remember what she highlighted on there.
They were
Completely vacant parcels, nothing on them. So it doesn't count like a building that's vacant. But something like that, if we were tasked with that, you'd have to update that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like people are asking me lately, quite often, what's the vacancy rate here in the downtown for residential, for commercial? It's like, whoever's tasked with that, it's every minute, minute by minute changes. I don't know how you keep something like that really current.
It might be better to post that base map data online that is helpful to developers and have that be available as open source. The real estate agent or other agency can take that, use it, they can apply their own layer of, well, here, we've identified these, developable parcels, they can market those, and then it's not the same market. We just provide the utility, the steep slopes, parcel data.
Yeah.
Right, agreed.
Yeah.
And we don't have to worry about updating.
Well, I think the willing seller is important though, because if we've identified these vacant lots and they're out there on our site, our website, and these owners are getting contacted, and it's their lot that their swimming pool is on, or their lot that, their shed is on or something next to their home, they're not going to be very happy with us.
And I don't mean that we would put a map out there that highlights vacant parcels, but anyone can search on the county's thing now. We should provide this, just say this is available, open availability of that data, so that someone can take a search, find those vacant parcels on their own.
Right, and then add the layers.
People or
That's a good idea. Yeah, that gets us out of the marketing and promoting thing.
Or at least we're providing a link, to, if you're interested, to say, hi, it's not, go to the link.
It's a really cool map. I mean, you can do a deep dive in that map. And it's got floodplains on it. When you turn everything on, you're... It's like, oh my God. And then you start turning everything off. I mean, she's got the storm drains on. It's everything is on that map. Everything you can think of.
And that's the benefit of having our own GIS.
Noah's awesome.
Yeah, it's great that we have a position for it. Anyone, did you have anything else?
I did.
Right.